Hey everybody, what's up? I hope you are well, because I am not. I went a little too hard last night being Halloween. I went trick-or-treating twice, and I ate so many Milky Ways. I am sick still. Hi, thank you for joining. I'm actually physically unable to exist, and I've been doing my best to not. But I had to come on live and talk a little bit about Mars retrograde because it did go retrograde yesterday. And I just wanted to drop just some tidbits of information on how to work with it, what you may be feeling. And then when I get off of this, I'm going to crawl back into this bed and I'm going to repent for my sins. But I hope you are all well, as well as you possibly can be. And I hope that you are all finding, some grounding and some peace. I feel like today we're already feeling the intensity of the energies. Waking up to Takeoff's death was like so fucking jarring for me. So I hope you guys are all well, or doing your best to be well. Thank you for joining. So yes, what am I feeling? I'm feeling pain as well. Physical pain, also emotional pain. Just I'm feeling the energy, it's really heavy, but it won't be like this the whole time. I think it's also just kind of like there was so much shift astrologically all at once that I think it just felt energetically jarring, but it won't feel like this for the whole retrograde for sure. And if you know how it's transiting your specific chart, it may help to provide some insight and, some solace. So yeah, Mars is retrograde. Now, obviously we talk the most about Mercury retrograde, and what's important to note about Mars retrograde is that it, in a lot of ways, especially this one, feels energetically similar to a Mercury retrograde because of the fact that it's in the sign of Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. So when it comes to the things that typically happen during Mercury retrograde, so like miscommunication, delays, we can expect that. Obviously, Mars rules a different part of our well-being and our psyche, so like there'll be different focuses, but I do want to say that overall, expect the same kind of energy when it comes to what a Mercury retrograde typically feels like, which, like I said, is return from the past, revisiting, renewing, recalibrating. And what's beautiful about a retrograde is that it really is permission to rest and to pause and to rethink and plan. So when it comes to Mars retrograde, what's beautiful about Mars retrograde is that it happened right after Saturn retrograde. So Saturn retrograde, I think, was an invitation for us to look at what is our life, what is feeding us, what is draining us, what do we want for ourselves, what is the kind of home and the foundation that we want to build for ourselves. And I think Saturn stationing direct, bleeding into Mars going retrograde is, okay, what are you going to do with that information now? And how are you going to use this time to build sort of what I would say a game plan? It's not necessarily time to execute. And I also believe in living seasonally. So know that we are in fall, and now is kind of a time to begin to hibernate, to begin to take back and internalize our energy a bit, and to sit and think and ponder rather than to go and do. I think we had a doing ass summer. Okay. I feel like I'm still recovering from summer. So yeah, know that like this is in alignment with what the seasons are kind of telling us to do, which is like to fall back, right? And to kind of sit and think. So know that now Mars is retrograde. Our action plan is getting reviewed. Like, okay, if I know now, for example, if Saturn retrograde taught you about what you want when it comes to your career, and perhaps that you want to pursue or take a different route, or that you don't find fulfillment when it comes to what you were doing before, what you were in pursuit of before, or what your why was before. Mars retrograde is saying, okay, now how do you want to dance with that information? Do you want to begin to look at different schools if you want to start studying, or do you want to start an Instagram with this creative idea, or do you want to mend and blend your old life with your new one so that like the transition is a bit easier? Obviously, this is all relative to where these transits were happening in your chart, which I'll go through the houses quickly at the end, relative to your rising sign of how Mars in retrograde is going to be sort of highlighting or slowing down or delaying things in your specific chart. But yes, just know that Saturn retrograde was like, okay, what are we doing? And Mars retrograde is like, okay, well, how do I want to do it? So a couple things to say. The first one is that with Mars being the planet that rules our energy, our drive, our ambition, how we go and how we do, especially when it comes to like just sort of like the divine masculine in us, the part of us that like executes. With that being retrograde, we are being invited to really be discerning and intentional with where our energy is going. Thank you so much. Yes, I don't even know how I'm speaking, but yes, we really are being invited to look at where is my energy going, and is it feeding things that is feeding me back? So this is relative to our relationships, but also I think what's most important, because it's in the sign of Gemini, which rules our mind and our thoughts. What are we thinking? And is it feeding something bigger, or something that's actually conducive to our growth and to our mental peace and health, right? So like if you find yourself constantly revisiting and thinking thoughts that are not conducive to your well-being and to your advancement, recognize that, clock that, and use this Mars retrograde to be like, how can I begin to train my thoughts to be supportive of me and supportive of what I'm evolving into or what I want to grow and build for myself. But also just outside of that, you know, what is my energy going towards? Am I pouring energy into relationships that are draining it instead of giving it back, into hobbies that aren't actually fulfilling me? Or rather, am I not feeding it into hobbies because I'm feeding it into a job that isn't fueling me? And I think what's really, really, really important, when I think I'm going to witness a lot of people come to terms with during this retrograde, is that so much of our energy collectively is getting drained by social media. And this is coming from someone who for the past month has been deleting the app and then re-downloading it every time I need to post a story. But I'm becoming very hyper aware of how much of my energy is being sucked through a screen. And I think with Mars retrograde being a time for us to review and reflect, where's my energy going, I think a lot of us are going to be more intentional when it comes to what's our relationship with the internet. And if I'm going to be on it, how can I be on it in a way where I'm being fed back rather than drained, or just be more intentional with your relationship with it. But yeah, so the first thing is really, really, really sit down, start a journaling page on it, and be like, where is my energy going? What places, what people, what thoughts are taking the life force out of me? Do I feel like I'm being fed back from those cords? Do I feel like I'm being left exhausted by conversations that I have with these people, or days that I spend doing what I don't want to be doing? And how can I begin to adjust? And like I said, this isn't a time to necessarily take action. It's just a time to observe, note, clock, and do with it what you will. Mars retrograde happens every 2 years, and it'll be until February 2023. So we have some time to play with this. So don't feel overwhelmed like you need to fix your life overnight, but like let it be slow, which honestly aligns with the second point that I was going to make about Mars and retrograde, which is to slow down, to be much more slow when it comes to what you are doing. Take rest, take breaks, take naps, but also like be so slow when it comes to your response to things. Even if like someone invites you somewhere and you're immediately like, yeah, I'll be there, be slow with it. Let it sit in your body a little bit and be like, do I actually want to go to this thing? Ask yourself the why behind the most macro and micro things. I think that's going to be a beautiful way to work with this Mars retrograde, is recognizing how can I slow down and be more intentional when it comes to my responses, especially because Mars, and this is something that I think we've already seen, Mars rules our relationship with rage and anger, and I think what's most important is how we react versus respond. So I think a way to be more empowered when it comes to how you respond or how you communicate is to recognize, is what I want to say or do right now coming from an emotional place? Is it coming from a rational place? Is it coming from a logical place? How can I be more slow with my response so that I give the most well-intentioned response? How do we be slow and accomplish things? I think we don't recognize the fact that we will get so much more done when we are slow, because there are less mistakes, because we're more aware and present and intentional, rather than like getting a bunch of shit done just to get it done, and then you burn out, and then you have to like sit out for 3 months because you have lost inspiration and motivation and like desire. So I think it's also worth noting that you'll have more energy and you won't feel the need to like take breaks or rest if what you are pouring your energy into is feeding you back, because it's like this like life loop. So if you're finding yourself drained, or you're finding yourself like, but I need to get stuff done, this probably is an invitation to look at, are the things that I am feeding actually feeding me back? And if I'm left feeling drained or tired, how can I recalibrate and refocus my energy towards things that are actually going to make me excited to show up to them and that give me back that energy? But yeah, so slowing down, especially when it comes to your reactions, recognizing and having a grounding practice in place for when you feel yourself responding emotionally rather than logically, which, mind you, we need our emotions, right? And like I just did this like pleasure eating workshop, and they were talking about how like if you see that you're about to emotional eat or showing up to food emotionally, being aware of it is the healing in itself. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to stop the process of like, okay, I'm about to binge because I'm emotional, or I'm on my period, or I'm going through a breakup and I like just want to like fill the void right now. shaming yourself for that versus like actually recognizing like I'm having an emotional eating moment and I'm going to do it anyway, and maybe next time I'll find another outlet to exert that energy. So I think it's the same thing that you can apply here in terms of like if you're finding yourself in a conversation where you're responding emotionally rather than rationally or logically, yes, it would be within your best interest to come back to a grounded space, but also it's worth noting that like as human beings, we're going to have emotional responses and emotional reactions, and I think recognizing it and knowing it in the moment is in itself such a tool for liberation and how you work towards living a life where you're more emotionally calibrated, because the more that you notice it and are aware of it, the more that you can have control over it. I hope that that makes sense. That was a whole tangent. I also cannot see because of how ill I am from how many Milky Ways I ate last night. So Mars is, like I said, that outward energy. So retrograde is going to make it come back inward. So there's a lot of sitting still, pausing, reflecting, doing the inner work, really recognizing and taking time to like get grounded and say, what do I want to do? Now that I have more awareness, now that this summer, especially with Saturn retrograde, was so illuminating when it comes to the kind of life that I want to live, how do I want to begin piecing those pieces of information together? How do I want to begin building an action plan towards living that life or towards inviting in that life and having that life meet me? Another big point that I think is going to come to fruition for a lot of people during Mars in retrograde is closure. So if there are any loose ends in your life, if there are any conversations that need to be had, if there are any relationships that ended in a weird way or arguments that were left half had, I think it's important to note that Mars in retrograde is going to be a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful opportunity to tie up loose ends and to seek closure and to have conversations, because now that we are hyper aware of when we are speaking from emotion rather than from a grounded and rational place, we can have these conversations with that awareness and really seek resolution. And this is for the people that are aware and that want to show up to these conversations and to these parts of their lives evolved. I do want to note the people that aren't aware or that aren't tapping into the fact that like a retrograde is happening here as I can work with it, they will be probably reacting more emotionally than usual or more aggressively than usual. They may be driving crazier. There may be more road rage right now because not a lot of people are tapped in and tuned in. So I do want to say, be hyper aware of the fact that the people around you, your family, your coworkers may be operating from a chaotic place. But you knowing what's going on and knowing how to work with it can arrive at a place where it doesn't matter how other people are showing up, because you know how you are showing up and you know how you're being invited to evolve. And with that being said, when it comes to closure, it's so important to note that sometimes closure does not need two parties. Sometimes a loose end can be tied up by you saying, I release that. I forgive. I don't forget. I'm growing from the part that I played. I recognize what I'll no longer allow. There's a boundary that's built from that situation and that experience. And I'm now moving on knowing that I had closure, knowing that I don't need to fix that or I don't need to show up for it, or like I am at peace with the situation and how it unfolded and I don't need to have a conversation. Just know that sometimes closure does not need the other person. It doesn't need the apology. It needs you recognizing what happened, honoring the fact that energy meets energy and situations that play out ultimately mirror something within us that we need to witness. And so if you can take whatever situation and apply it to how you invited it in or you called it in or what you wanted to learn from it or what you attracted it by from, if that makes sense, just know that you can seek closure and situations can find their own resolution, even if it's just you seeking it or just you finding the peace from it. And last few points, honestly, what is your grounding practice in place for when your emotions can be confused or can confuse you with rational thinking? Have a grounding practice when it comes to a person that you speak to, taking a breath, a certain kind of breath, coming back to nature, taking off your shoes and feeling the floor and being like, okay, I'm responding emotionally, or my thoughts are coming from a place that's emotional rather than logical. Like I said, closure, a lot of people are going to get cut off right now. A lot of habits are going to, like, if you're like, man, I really wanted to take this vaping habit away, or I wanted to stop doing this thing, now is a beautiful time to actually like execute. I know I've been saying don't take action, but when it comes to action that feeds reflection of how you want to evolve. Like if you want to work towards something right now, when it comes to quitting something or getting rid of something, now is the time to begin to implement that, or at least make the devotion towards it, if that makes sense. But yes, just know that like a lot of endings and like a lot of like cut ties may happen right now when it comes to closure. Also when it comes to, like I said, habits or attachments. And just like people, once you start to reflect on what's taking my energy and you recognize the fact that like, oh, it's a person or it's a thing, cutting off with little to no explanation of why you need to take back your power is highly encouraged right now. And I'm not advocating for ghosting, though. I will say I think ghosting gets a worse rep than it deserves. Like I think people think that like ghosting is like the number one sin, and I'm like, sometimes you really need to peace out, and sometimes they need to seek closure on their own, because sometimes you got to save yourself a bit. So have discernment when it comes to where closure or where ghosting is necessary and when there is a follow-up conversation that needs to be had. But like just know that like endings, getting cut off, understanding the fact that like, yes, exactly, that's Scorpio energy. Relentless. It's giving like you are on your boat. You are your lifeboat. You need to make sure that you're staying afloat. And if there's things that are weighing that boat down, you got to throw them overboard, babe. And sometimes you need to explain to the rock why, and sometimes you need to toss it and hope that the rock figures it out as it finds its way to its new home. I went so far with that metaphor for no reason. So yeah, overall, that's the vibe. Oh yeah, so quickly, if you know your rising sign, then this is kind of where you may be experiencing delays or just this energy, this reflective, sit still, reflect, and reintegrate, recalibrate energy. So if you are a Gemini rising, obviously this is in your first house. This is going to be relative to like, how are you showing up in your world? What's your identity? How do people see you and experience you? And is it reflective of your truth? Cancer, this is going to be in your 12th house, Cancer rising. So this is everything having to do with your internal world, your fears, your subconscious. Really, it would be a time to reflect on what is my inner dialogue, and is it feeding me or is it draining me? Leo risings, this is in your 11th house. So this for you may be a time where you're like, this friendship, this person, this attachment is getting cut off. And maybe I need to rebrand ghosting. That's all I'm going to say. Who was that? Okay, so Virgo rising, this is your career. So you want to reflect on what parts of my career are true to me, what parts of my career am I feeding, and it's taking the life force out of me. Really just be reflective on like, how am I showing up in the world? How are people experiencing me on my platform? And is it true? Is it honest? If you're a Libra rising, this is in your 9th house. This is your relationship with divinity, how you define God, how you experience God. Also traveling, and higher learning and pursuit of knowledge. So several things here. One is that if you are considering studying again, now's the time to sit with that. Also, now may not be the time to travel. Take some inner trips. Read a fantasy book. If you're a Libra rising, find a romantic novel that also has like werewolves in it, and just take some time to go on a trip within. If you're a Scorpio rising, this is in your 8th house, which is crazy because this is the Scorpio house. So hi, my love. So this is really going to highlight relationship with death and rebirth, as well as, yeah, just I think 8th house, because it also honors our relationship with like external resources. So like other people's money, reflecting on your relationship with dependency versus codependency versus sovereignty versus independence. And also just like, yeah, just know that the veil is so thin right now anyway. I don't know if you guys feel it, but like this Scorpio energy is beyond. So just overall for all of the signs, if you want to call in your ancestors right now and ask for help, now would really be the time to do that. But yeah, for Sagittarius risings like myself, this is in our 7th house of relationships, which I just feel like, did I need more work here? I guess I did. But yeah, reflecting on your relationships, your needs in relationships, and are you encompassing what you are desiring to call in? Are you mirroring what you want by being the embodiment of it? I'm trying, God. I promise you I'm trying. I just want a lover. If you're a Capricorn rising, this is in your 6th house. Said on my altar this morning. Yes, I actually saw in your story you had cacao, and I was like, I need to have a cacao moment. I meant to have it yesterday. I'm going to have it tomorrow, because the idea of chocolate overall right now is making me a little nauseous. If you are a Capricorn rising, this is in your 6th house. So this is a really, really, really potent time to sit down and look at your routine, look at your structure, look at what your day-to-day looks like. Not the overall vision, but rather like, what do I do when I wake up in the morning, lunchtime, snack time, dinner time? What am I setting up? What are the markers of my days? And which parts of it are draining me? Which parts of it are feeding me? Just be really honest with like, how do I need to switch up my routine? And also, how can I build a routine that honors my sense of mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional health? I would love to. We actually have been meaning to set that up. Hello. I need that. I'll text you. Love you so much. If you're an Aquarius rising, this is in your 5th house. So this has everything to do with your inner child, creative expression as well. So I think this would honestly bring about a time to sit and reflect on, how do I want to begin to honor my inner child in the way that I creatively express myself? And in what ways am I not doing that? And what ways do I need to do that? And what ways is my creative self like screaming to get out? And can I be in honor of that? Last few, if you are a Pisces rising, this is in your 4th house. I will say the mutable signs, so Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo are going to be feeling this the most if you have a mutable sun, moon, or rising. So Pisces being a mutable sign in your 4th house, this has to do with your inner world, your sense of self, reflecting on like your physical space, but also the space that you have within, and does it house and hold the healthiest version of you? If you're an Aries rising, this is in your 3rd house. This is communication. Mind you, the 3rd house is ruled by Gemini, so having the Gemini Mars transit this house really is going to have you thinking a lot of thoughts, maybe overthinking, maybe building a healthier relationship with how you make decisions from a logical place. But yeah, just know that like communication is going to be highlighted right now. So like, are you communicating? Is there something that you need to communicate? Only you would know. And lastly, Taurus, this will be in your 2nd house, which is the house that rules your possessions and your relationship with things, your relationship with the external world, also your relationship mainly with money, and your sense of self-worth. So you want to reflect and slow down when it comes to those themes. I would consider... I will say one thing to look out for during this transit is impulsivity, impulsive decisions, hyper-awareness of how we're making our decisions, honestly, overall. But know that a lot of the ways that we make our decisions could be from a state of impulsion, right? Emotional choices. So just know that, especially when it comes to a 2nd house transit, like, are you spending money emotionally? But just overall for everyone, where are your decisions being made from? Are they being made from a place of love, a place of survival, a place of fear, a place of reaction, a place of emotion, or a place of impulsivity? And where can you compartmentalize? I think that's the first time that I've ever said that word right on the first try. But yeah, like, how can you make sure that like, okay, if I'm going to make this decision and I know that it's coming from an emotional place, how can I at least walk with awareness of that? Or reroute? Or is an impulsive decision going to help me in this moment because I'm usually stuck in my head and overthinking things? Or does this need more thinking, right? Just having a more intimate relationship with your mind and the decisions that you make and where they're coming from. All right. I am going to hibernate for the rest of the year because I kind of want to die, but I love you guys so much. Hopefully I'm more of a human being the next time that I come on live. But yes, if you want to know more about how this will affect your specific chart, hit me up. I also just shared an 11/11 event that I'll be doing with Just Be Inspired, my favorite Reiki master. It'll be a quantum leaping event, but I'm also going to be doing something on IG Live, so stay tuned for that. And also, if you're in the South Florida area, we're doing a sacral chakra dance class this Sunday at Coco Market. That's all. Love you guys so much, and have an amazing retrograde season.